This is Irene's story, and she was unhappy with her husband's complete lack of participation in household and childcare duties. Before the child was born, Irene had to cram all the knowledge about childcare, and her husband did nothing. Her husband firmly believed that all household and childcare duties were Irene's responsibilities. Every day, Irene burned with a desire for revenge against her husband. One day, when her husband brought a colleague home, he began to lie, boasting about being a super dad. Furious, Irene finally began her revenge. She decided to leave the crying child with her husband. Will Irene's plan work out? And how will her husband deal with this situation? My husband doesn't lift a finger in the house. In other words, he doesn't do any housework or childcare at all. He believes that taking care of the house and children is solely the responsibility of a housewife, as he is the breadwinner. It's fine if I do the housework, but I want him to be a little more involved with our child who was just born. I feel like I'm raising the child alone. When I told my husband I was pregnant, he was also happy with me. I never thought it would be like this. I had hoped that when our child was born, my husband and I would embark on the journey of parenthood together, but it seems he hasn't fully embraced his role as a father. Looking back now, I had worries even before the child was born. I studied a lot to prepare for my first experience with childcare before our child was born. I was very anxious, so I told my husband how I felt about it, and I invited him to study together with me many times. Just teach me later, Irene. I'll forget it anyway if I learn it now. He said that, but he didn't try to learn anything himself. And, as expected, he still doesn't do anything now. I don't think he even bothers to read the childcare diary that I'm keeping and sharing with him. He is a typical office worker who usually arrives home on time and doesn't have to travel for work. So he's usually off on weekends. But he doesn't seem to value spending time with our child. Hey, can I go to a cookout with my friends this weekend? It might turn into a sleepover, so thanks in advance. He says something like that without even considering my feelings. Of course, I expressed my dissatisfaction and said, Hey, can you make some time for our child? What? Spend time with a kid? He's still just sleeping. We can't do anything together if he can't stand or talk yet. When he said that, I froze. And then I got so angry it was unbelievable. Hey, don't you want to see our child grow up together? He's your child too, you know? It's hard to believe that you have no interest in him until he can talk. I do want to see him grow up, but I can see him every day when I come home. We don't have to be together 24/7 to see him grow up, do we? You'd rather spend time on your own leisure activities than with your child. Huh? What kind of tone is that? I work, so it's only natural that I need to take a break sometimes. You spend all day at home doing nothing but housework, so it's only natural that you take care of the child. And it's tiring when you complain about it all the time. Taking care of the baby while doing housework is actually quite difficult. And it's only natural for the father to take care of the child too, right? It's not fair to assume that all child care is my responsibility. Okay, I understand. Then I'll just decline the barbecue, right? My wife doesn't want to take care of the child alone, so she told me to take care of him on the weekends, and I'll just tell my friends that. What? That's not the point. I don't want to take care of him alone. I want us to raise him together. Well, it's all in how you say it. But every mother does housework and childcare at the same time, right? Don't blame me just because you don't have the talent for it. My husband always misunderstands my feelings, and that's why we end up fighting like this every time. But I don't want to give up on raising our child together, and I don't know what to do. I've thought about kicking him out. But if our fight gets heated, it will be me and the child who end up getting kicked out. Although I don't say it out loud, I think my husband feels like he's financially supporting us. That's why I think he starts saying things like, I'm working, so, in such a pompous way. I'm really considering going back to my parents' house. I wonder what other mothers in the world are doing. Spending time with mom friends or people who feel the same way might help reduce the stress. Whenever I go to the park hoping to make some mom friends, I often see families who come together, including the dads. It's just that my husband has never joined us at the park, which makes me feel a bit down, and the outing ends up being a bit of a letdown. I envy couples who are properly raising their child together. My in-laws have old-fashioned values, like men work, and women do housework and childcare. It seems like my in-laws were in a similar environment, so that's probably why my husband doesn't think he's wrong and has never even considered my feelings as a mother. My mother-in-law is a very quiet person, so I don't think she's ever complained to my father-in-law. Memories of not being able to involve my husband with our childcare became a huge source of dissatisfaction. I used to love my husband so much, but now I feel an immense amount of resentment towards him. I regret so many things because I never thought our relationship would end up like this. The forum users wanted to show support and comfort to Irene, who was struggling with the challenges of raising a child alone. It appears that Irene's husband is living his life freely without taking her feelings into consideration. However, will there be a day when things start to get better for them? A few days had passed since then. While I was having dinner and doing the dishes, I asked my husband to look after the kids. "Oh, okay." Although my husband obediently agreed, the child started crying just as I started doing the dishes. While doing the dishes, I watched my husband, and unbelievably, he didn't do anything. He continued to sit on the couch and watch TV even though he should have heard the baby crying. He didn't even try to pick up or talk to the baby, he just let the baby cry. He didn't understand the meaning. I was bewildered and asked my husband, "Hey, isn't the baby crying?"
"Oh, yeah."
"Yeah? I asked you to watch the kids while I do the dishes."
"But I'm nearby."
"I didn't just say be near. I said watch him."
"It's just crying. It's not like anything dangerous is happening."
"That's not the issue. Why don't you try to stop the crying?"
"I thought the baby would stop crying on its own."
"The baby won't stop crying. Pick him up and check his diaper." When I gave him that instruction, my husband finally stood up, but he did it very reluctantly.
"Oh, the diaper needs to be changed."
"Okay, then change it."
"What? I can't do it. I've never done it before."
"Then you should do it even more."
"I don't want to. My hands might get dirty."
"Isn't it your child? Don't you feel responsible?"
No. It's just plain dirty."
When I saw my husband laughing while saying that, I couldn't take it anymore. "You don't have to do anything anymore." I exploded in anger. Even when my husband saw me like that, he didn't think he did anything wrong.
"Huh? Why are you suddenly getting angry? You're emotionally unstable, aren't you? You're acting like a child."
I seriously considered leaving because he said something like that. I think I should stop expecting anything from my husband. I'll just end up suffering myself. I don't want to recognize that man as a father anymore, and I don't want him to touch this child. My anger towards my husband is only increasing. It wouldn't be surprising if I reached my limit and exploded. It's not good for this child if I keep accumulating stress like this. I hope we can find some solution, but for now, it might be important not to keep it all bottled up. It may only be a matter of time before Irene can take it anymore and leaves home. Irene seems to be increasingly driven by a desire for revenge against her husband. And finally, a significant event occurred that changed the situation dramatically. Today, it seems like I can tell an interesting story that's a little different from usual. It's like I exploded, but maybe it was more like a controlled explosion? I had fun because I finally got a chance to get back at my husband. Last night, my husband came home with two of his colleagues and they started drinking in the house. I thought it was just normal to be bothered by it with a baby in the house, but I couldn't say anything in front of people I didn't know. But it seems like his colleagues noticed how I felt about it. "We're sorry your child is still so young." So, my husband apologized and I decided to let it go. It seems that his colleagues were holding back, but my husband almost forced them to come. That's also why I couldn't turn them away. And so, when the drinking party started, his colleagues turned to my husband and,
Your baby is really cute. It must be so happy spending time with him, right?
So I was asked that. I was listening to my husband, wondering what he would say. And then, you know what he said?
Hey, isn't he cute? He looks just like me. I feel so happy to see his adorable face every day.
He started saying things that made me doubt whether he really thought that way or not. I must have looked really surprised when I saw my husband like that, and then his coworker said,
Are you saying he actually does such a thing? Is he actually taking care of the child?
He asked me that. I hesitated about telling the truth, but my husband interrupted and seemed flustered.
Of course I'm taking childcare seriously. I'm a super involved dad at home.
He was telling such a bold-faced lie. At that moment, I decided to get revenge. But my husband shot me a look that said, Don't make things worse. I was so angry that I walked away for a bit. Later, my husband and his coworkers were talking about their kids, and that's when the baby started crying. Well, it was a sleep time, so it was only natural. That's when I came up with a plan for revenge. I took the crying baby to my husband and said, He's crying, so just calm him down like you always do. I handed off the baby to my husband. My husband seemed to panic for a moment.
What? Me?
After saying that, he started to look a little uncomfortable. You seem confident enough to talk about being a hands-on dad, so just do it as you usually do. I said that and left the room. My husband panicked and started saying things like, There, stop crying, as he tried to soothe the baby. It was hilarious to see him in action like a beginner. Of course, the baby's cries only got louder. One of his co-workers couldn't take it anymore and said,
Isn't it the diaper or something?
Hearing that, my husband froze for a moment and said,
Maybe it's the diaper?
He started looking for the diaper, not knowing where it was. At this point, his colleagues seemed a little put off by his behavior. After all, if he were a good dad, he would know where the diapers were. After finally finding the diaper, my husband began taking off the baby's clothes. But he didn't seem to know how to change it. He was fumbling around, panicking the whole time. Even after changing the diaper, the baby was still crying. My husband was still in a panic and said,
Why won't the baby stop crying?
He was trying his best to soothe the baby, but it's not like the baby would calm down just because a stranger was trying to calm it down. I felt sorry for the baby, so I took the baby from my husband and said, Looks like the baby won't stop crying. Maybe it's because it's being calmed down by someone it doesn't usually see. I started putting the baby to sleep. And to my delight, the baby stopped crying right away. His colleagues who were watching the scene seemed to have realized that my husband's words were a blatant lie, and they looked at him with disdain. My husband was pale and started making excuses.
No, that's weird. The baby usually stops crying properly.
Oh, really?
The co-workers realized that my husband was lying, but they pretended not to notice. But I wasn't going to let it end here. Wait, always? When did that happen? Have you ever held this child before? Actually, everyone already knows that you've never taken care of the child at all. I said that and his co-workers fell silent, while my husband turned even paler. I felt bad for dragging his co-workers into this, but I couldn't pass up the perfect opportunity for revenge. My husband looked at me with teary eyes, but I pretended not to notice. That's when the drinking party ended for my husband and his friends.
The baby seems to have fallen asleep, so I'll head home since it wouldn't be good to make too much noise.
The co-workers said that and hurriedly left. After successfully putting the child to sleep, my husband was waiting for me in the living room. I thought he might get angry or upset with me, but he actually said something unexpected.
I realized I haven't really done anything so far.
I was surprised because it seemed like such a normal thing to say. He seemed to be shocked about something.
I didn't even know where the diapers were or if I was changing them correctly. I couldn't get the baby to stop crying at all, so it was a shock for me.
So my husband has said that? I coldly said. Well, isn't that obvious?
Yeah, I guess you're right.
My husband looked down, but I said, Hey, isn't it weird to feel down when you haven't done anything so far? I'm also trying things out and growing as a mother. You've been assuming that taking care of the child was my job and haven't done anything until now, so it's natural that you're not good at it. That's what I said. I didn't intend to be kind to him anymore. My husband seemed even more down after hearing my cold words.
It's true that I thought taking care of the child was your job, and I thought it was okay because I'm working. But seeing my colleagues today made me realize that I can't continue like this.
That's the first time he's ever changed his mind about something like that. If that's how you feel, why don't you start helping me with the child starting from tomorrow? I don't want you to feel like you're just doing me a favor forever. The child is our child, so taking care of him is not just one person's responsibility. We need to raise our child together. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I understand. There's nothing more pathetic than this.
I hope you'll keep that feeling. Honestly, I don't trust you right now.
I'm sorry. I've been leaving everything to you up until now.
Instead of just apologizing, can you please start cooperating with me from now on? I want you to have a stronger sense of fatherhood. Oh, by the way, could you read through the daily childcare diary that I've been keeping since the child was born?
Got it. I'll read everything carefully.
Just so you know, I won't trust you just because you say you will. Whether you can really live up to being a father or not depends entirely on your actions from now on.
Yeah, I understand.
My husband was so obedient that it was kind of creepy. But it made me really happy that he listened to me for the first time. It seems like he read all of our child-rearing diaries that night. And the next day, he stared at our child's face before going to work. I don't really understand it, but he might be slowly trying to become a father. Well, even if he decides to take on child-rearing, things may not go as planned. I understand the hardships better than anyone, so depending on my husband's attitude, I want to help him out. I think we can still start over now, so I plan to observe how much my husband will do.
And so,
Irene achieved her revenge splendidly. Surprisingly, her husband seemed to have reflected on his actions. The future now depends on the husband's actions, but I hope they can work together and support each other. If you were in Irene's position, what would you do?